The modern epidemic of mental fatigue, anxiety, and constant rumination is often framed as a personal failure to cope with daily life. We so often blame ourselves for this exhaustion. The biophilia hypothesis points to a different culprit. Human brains were specifically built to process and thrive within the natural world. For hundreds of thousands of years, our neurology adapted to nature. Our existence staring at screens represents barely a fraction of human history. That rapid shift means our ancient biological hardware is trying to run a modern operating system. We are constantly short-circuiting against our daily surroundings. The daily burnout is a predictable biological symptom of an organism completely removed from its natural habitat. Biologists define this friction as an evolutionary mismatch. The environment we live in demands a physiological response our bodies were not designed to sustain. Every minute in a city forces your brain to filter out artificial noise, dodge dense crowds, and process high-contrast screens. It is a relentless, unnatural neurological tax. Compare that to the layered Badlands. The human visual system is specialized to process these wide-open, naturally organized fields. Absorbing this type of geometry requires almost zero mental effort, creating an automatic baseline of rest for the brain. We spend billions searching for complex medical treatments for our modern anxiety, while overlooking a basic environmental deficiency. When we actually measure what happens to a person who steps into a forest, the data is striking. Exposure to nature triggers an immediate, measurable physiological shift. Within minutes of exposure to green spaces, heart rates slow down and blood pressure plummets. The environment engages the parasympathetic nervous system. It acts as the body's natural override switch, halting the fight-or-flight stress response in its tracks. Once that switch is flipped, cortisol, the primary stress hormone, begins to drain rapidly from the bloodstream. Clinicians refer to this biological reflex as stress reduction theory. Our bodies possess an innate, involuntary relaxation response to the natural world. Viewing natural elements physically alters blood flow and oxygenation in the prefrontal cortex, which smooths out erratic brain activity. That specific region of the brain is our command center for emotional regulation. It controls the endless loop of anxious rumination. Nature operates as a measurable physical intervention that forcefully downregulates our biological stress markers. Beyond physical stress, city living drains our cognitive reserves. To function in modern society, we rely on directed attention, the exhausting mental energy required to focus on specific tasks while actively ignoring a constant barrage of distractions. To repair that specific fatigue, researchers point to attention restoration theory. The complex, effortless patterns found in nature provide what psychologists call soft fascination. It captures our interest without demanding our intense focus. By holding our gaze effortlessly, soft fascination allows our directed attention to rest and actively rebuilds our capacity to think clearly. You do not need to abandon society and move to a remote cabin to achieve this. Medical professionals now view nature exposure as a specific, highly accessible dosage. Data reveals an optimal microdose. 20 to 30 minutes per session is where mental benefits spike. 3 to 5 times weekly establishes a protective baseline against depression. Whether walking or sitting, benefit curves match perfectly. Duration is what matters. Even brief, localized exposure to a community garden or a small patch of soil in an otherwise dense neighborhood triggers these profound physiological changes. Consistent microdoses of green space are mathematically sufficient to inoculate the brain against urban mental strain. This data reveals a public health phenomenon known as the Equigenic Effect. Nature exposure disproportionately improves health outcomes for disadvantaged populations. Introducing green infrastructure into cities acts as a powerful public health equalizer, measurably reducing community-level depression where it is needed most. We have spent decades treating a walk in the park as a passive leisure activity. The scientific reality confirms it is an active medical intervention. Stepping into the woods is not an escape from reality. It is an urgent return to the biological baseline we need to maintain cognitive health.